This was a tough one, this song and this whole idea for me. So I'm going to ask you a question. Where were you on September 11th, 2001? Just give it a moment. Where were you? What were you doing? What happened? So I was in bed, and I got a phone call that I should turn on my television. And I did, just in time to watch the South Tower go down. And my initial thought was, Kevin was living at that time doing a Broadway show. He was living only a couple blocks from the World Trade Center. And I couldn't get him. I couldn't get him on the phone. And I didn't know where he was. And I spent the day, most of the morning anyway, not knowing until he finally called me and said that as it turned out, he had an early meeting on the other side of town. But not everyone had an early meeting on the other side of town. But every single one of us in this room knows where we were. I know where I was when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. I was 7 years old, and I was sitting in a Catholic grade school when they announced that the only Catholic president had just been killed. And it was a very crazy day. I remember we were all told to go home. In those days, you walked home, and at 7, we all thought we were going to be assassinated on the way home. All of us. And I remember my mother sent me that day to the deli, which is right around the corner. She said, we go to the deli and get some lunch meat? And I remember walking down the back alley going, why would she send me out in these terrible times? And they're the memories I have of that particular event. So, on the internet this morning, when I was looking up what was going on and I'd watched the ceremony in New York, it said, 9/11, the day the world changed. 9/11, the day the world changed. And I had to think about that for a minute. Did my world change on that day? Did this whole world change on that day? Or was this day just the absolute culmination of the way mind had been being used all the way up to that moment? Well, as religious scientists, we know the answer to that. Every single thing that happens is the direct correlation to the way mind has been being used. Race mind. One mind. There is one mind right now, and it is shared by everyone, because everyone is that one mind. And so when you put all of our beliefs together, all of our spiritual beliefs together, all of our emotions together, all of our feelings together, all of our intellect together, all of our learning together, all of our wisdom together, you get a playing field that shows you where the earth, where the consciousness of this world is right now. And that was the consciousness of the world on that day in this country. That's what we teach. Now, for some people, that can be really difficult to handle. It's very difficult to say, well, what are you saying? This is just the natural evolution of how things go? No. Someone out there didn't decide that this is what should happen. We all did. In the way we use our minds, every single time we allow ourselves to hate anyone or to point to anyone and think they are different than us in a way that makes them lower, we are contributing to that type of event. And so it really is our responsibility to wake up and to see everything through the eyes of love. And Reverend Karen put it so beautifully, so brilliantly. I feel old when I say I'm proud of her. I'm so proud of her. But I am. I am proud of the woman she has become. I was proud of the woman she first showed up as, and I am even more proud of the woman she has become and the minister she has become. Not as becoming, has become. And so she said this thing about, it's not easy. It's not easy to just love everything that's out there. But here's the thing about loving everything. I am not asking you to look at everything and pretend it's something else. I'm not asking you to love violence or to pretend it's not there. We are not a philosophy of turning away and pretending nothing's happening. Ernest Holmes says to turn away from the condition in treatment, in prayer. Once you see it, that's when you have to love everything. That's when you have to turn entirely away from it and understand what it is. and speak your truth about it. That does not mean you don't see it. And surrender allows you to walk right through it as love, because love can walk through anything. Fear has a problem. Doubt has a problem. Uncertainty has a little bit of a problem. But love has no problem. Love just walks through, permeates everything, and pushes it all aside. That's what we can do. So I'm working on my talk, and I had cleaned our guest house in the back, and I'm sitting at the desk, and I'm working on what I want to talk about today, and I just happened to look right to the left of me, and here is this big picture of Holland Taylor as Governor Ann Richards. And it was a little daunting. I was like, oh my God, what are you saying to me? But it was like this, she's in that white suit, and she's like, and then I saw the quote that was on this big picture, and here's the quote. Governor Ann Richards said, "I have very strong feelings about how you lead your life. You should always look ahead. You never look back." And I'm reading this, and I was like, the first sentence, I have very strong feelings about the way you live your life. And I thought, she's talking to me? She's talking to me. Years later, this quote ended up on a picture of the woman who played her on Broadway, but she's talking to me. Very strong feelings. You consistently look forward. You don't look back. Now, I want to clarify something. I know a lot about Governor Ann Richards now because, of course, we did so much work on examining this woman's life. Ann Richards would never, ever say, don't pay attention to what has happened before. But what she would say is, don't get stuck there. Find out what there was, and now move on with love. So what are we doing today? We're looking back at what happened in a very tragic moment in time. You have choices in this. You can get stuck there. You can look at the world today and blame the same people that were responsible for that they're still around. Or you can understand where it all came from in a scientific fashion, in a mental fashion, in a consciousness fashion, and move on and be the change you wish to see in the world, not the judgment that there's way too much of. That's our job. So the title of my talk today is One Day, Day One. And I was thinking about this song and, how am I going to talk about this song? Because the lyrics, all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play one day. So all my life I've been waiting for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. Waiting for the people to say there's going to be no more war. But you know what? We've been saying it for a very long time, haven't we? How many people in this room have been saying no more war? Right? How many people in this room have been saying we have to stop fighting? Okay? There's a big difference between saying it and doing it. There's a huge difference between saying it and doing it. And I know we're in the middle of a political race that is one of the most volatile political races I've ever experienced in my 61 years of living. And yet, I also know that life unfolds perfectly. And that this country and every other country will unfold perfectly. Sometimes perfectly doesn't look so good. But it's always perfect. And you either come from that perspective or you allow the world to shift and shape you based on how it's going. This is your power. This is the power we have as religious scientists. This is the power we have as new thought people. This is the power we have when we know our mind is capable of being the change. So the idea of one day, we've got to get past this idea of one day. Because you know what happens to one day? There it is, it's always there. I've choreographed this. It's always there. It never goes anywhere else. There it is, one day, one day, one day. How many of you are tired of one day? Am I the only one? Or did you just want me to dance some more? I can't tell. I'm tired of one day this is going to happen. Someday my prince will come. Well, that happened. Someday. See? I didn't say someday, I said now. It's funny, we were at a dinner party last night, and a couple was talking about their marriage, and the wife, and they're in their second marriages, and the wife said about when she met her husband, she had met him actually when he was married to someone else, and she thought to herself, now, this was so funny, I hope I can make it funny for you. She said, I was sitting at that dinner and I saw him and I thought he was a nice guy, and the wife, and they looked like they had this beautiful marriage, and I thought, I want what she has. Now she has it. But I thought, what great science of mind. Who knew Harry Met Sally was so science of mind? I'll have what she's having. I use that quote all the time because here's the deal. You gotta see it and then decide it. But you can't just see it and say, one day, I'm gonna have that. You can't just do that. Now, if you say, one day, I'm gonna have that. I remember sitting in Philadelphia and watching the Tonys and saying, one day, I will be at the Tony Awards. And I was, a couple of times. One day, I will star in a Broadway show. That didn't take long. One day, I will star in a Broadway show. That happened. One day, watching Dr. Walker, one day, I will do what he's doing. Here I am. One day, but how does one day become day one? Because at some point, one day turns into the action of your life, and you say, today is the day, and I am moving forward from this point forward. One day is now. One day, day one. My daughter had a huge audition yesterday, and I laughed because, I felt a little bit like Mama Rose driving her to this audition. But when we got there was a real Mama Rose waiting in the entranceway, and Nora and I were sitting there, and this woman saying to her daughter, she's going, hey, do some sit-ups. I need your work in here before this audition. And I turned to Nora, I was like, oh my God, thank God. I'm not like that. But you should warm up. And I have to say, I am so proud of my daughter because her one day turned into day one. And she did it. She went in there, she sang in front of some of the most incredible Broadway people I know. She sang, she danced, she did her monologue, she left. I was having a conniption. Really. When we left, I went, we had a tough audition. And the really good part was that parents aren't allowed in the room with their children when they audition, and parents should be nowhere near them. I think parents should stay home and send an Uber with them to take them to their audition. Because an Uber driver is not going to go, did you vocalize? What do you look like? What are you wearing? No, you're just going to get in the car and go. So I was going to accompany her so she could sing, because I'm a control freak. And they said, I'm sorry, no parents in the room. I was like, okay, good. So she'll sing a cappella. But as it turned out, they came out and said, we'd like you to come in and play for her. So I went in and played her audition. So I'm sitting with my back to the people watching her, and one of them was one of the judges from So You Think You Can Dance. And I'm sitting there playing, and she just walks out and says, what are you singing? Oh, I'll be singing blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, boom, 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 boom. And I start to play, and I played an intro that only God could have found the opening note to. And I'm playing. For those of you who have sung with me playing the piano, you know what this is like. And then I'm doing it going, oh my God, I'm sabotaging her audition. Great parenthood. So I play it, and then I do a little gliss on the piano, and I'm like, find the note, find the note, find the note. And she just starts singing, then I found her. And we had a great audition. And then I left really fast. I said, I'm leaving now, I'm done. And whether she gets it or not doesn't matter. Whether you succeed or not, you succeed the minute you turn one day into day one. So what are you working on? What is it in your life that you need to do where you need to say day one? And you know what? If your day one should have been, years ago. Anybody got that going on? Yeah, right? Not me, you. But, if your day one seems like it's passed you by, it hasn't. I always talk about Kenny Rogers, who was in his 50s when he finally had a hit, when he finally became a household name. You know, I say 50s now as I'm in my 60s. He was a youngin'. It is never too late. It is never too late to start. It is never too late to say now. And if you had a dream and you think that dream is behind you, here's the worst thing you can do. Turn around and stare at it. Because it's not going to change. What you did, you did. What you accomplished or didn't accomplish, you accomplished or didn't accomplish. That's not going to change. None of that's going to change. What happened on 9/11 happened. It's not going to not happen or unhappen. You are not going to be able to rationalize your way out of it. And you're not going to be able to woo-woo, new thought your way out of it either and say, it's all God, it's all good. It's all God, it's all good. Because someone's going to say to you, 9/11 was good? And you're going to be like, oh, I'm kind of at a loss for words now. I don't know what I was saying, it just made me feel good. No, it's about really using your mind, consciously using your mind, to understand what that was, to understand it's still here, the consciousness is still here. Which side of that consciousness do you want to be on? And do you realize how powerful one mind is? One mind in consciousness with the truth, is literally a vast majority. Ernest Holmes said something like that. One mind, one person, one of us here today who taps into the truth, the absolute truth, that all there is only love. You will ripple out into the world. Everyone around you will feel it. Everyone around them will feel it as they get into the energy of your consciousness. That's what we get to do here today. So, surrender. It really is time for us to surrender the past. It is time for us to surrender all of our pasts. But you have to glean what you learned from it. So, I asked you, where were you on 9/11 when that happened? The more important question at this point is, where are you today on 9/11? What if somewhere down the line, someone says, where were you on 9/11? You can actually say, well, on 9/11/2016, I began my journey to changing the world. Because on 9/11/2016, I stopped complaining about the world I lived in. And I started using my mind to autocorrect what doesn't work. I started using my mind to literally help this world that we live in accept this truth that we are all one people. All one people. This dinner party I was at last night had a lot of people of a lot of different faiths, a lot of different countries. Germany, Sweden, Brooklyn. A lot of different countries. And yet, by the time we got through this amazing, beautiful dinner, and we talked a little bit about, not religion. Religion is literally something that's very divisive. But we did talk about the fact that at the center of all religion is love. And that all religions teach that God is all there is. And that's what I really don't get. If every religion teaches God is all there is, doesn't that mean all of it is God? If God is all there is, then God is a Muslim. Just as easily as God is a Catholic. Just as easily as God is a Buddhist or a Hindu. Just as easily as God is the pilot and the building and the people inside. And everyone else that got affected by that. It's all God. You know, one of the things we teach in this science is this beautiful quote by Ernest Holmes. He talks about the absolute and the relative. Now, most of us grew up believing the absolute version of God. The divine God. How many of you grew up with God the Father, the divine God? Right? The perfect God. That perfect thing that we were all aspiring to. How many of you made it there? It's like a really bad game to play because no one ever gets there. Mother Teresa, she got there. In fact, she just got there this week. So we all grew up with that God, that divine entity, that absolute thing in the sky that we're all attaining, trying to get, right? And then there's the relative. All your relatives. There's the relative, me, as I relate to that God. How do I relate? I'm the relative in the world of form. All humans are the relatives. So there's the absolute God, and then there's the relatives, me, people, the divine, people. So we get that quote. I'm a divine being having a human experience, or a human being having a divine experience, whichever side of that equation you're falling on. But Ernest Holmes, at the end of his life, ends up saying, I got it all wrong. It's nice in 1960 that he said he got it all wrong, since he started in 1927. But he said, I got it all wrong in this one point, just a big point, a very big point, an enormous point. Are you getting the point? Very big. He said, the absolute is the relative, at the level of the relative. Meaning, it's all one thing. One thing. God is one thing. And you get to decide, like I said last week, you want to live your greatness, you want to live your littleness. And we've all lived our littleness, and we've all felt our greatness. So it's our choice. Which one do we want to live? So the power that you have going forward to go from one day to day one is really staggering. Today gets to be your day one. In whatever that is, whatever it is. You know, there's 4 corners on that table. Health. If you've been having health challenges, today can be your day one to be done. Be done with the health challenges. Be over it. I know you still feel it. You may still feel it. But be done. You tell it you're done. Day one. Get out of there. You're done. Relationships, you're having problems with your relationships, you're having problems in your marriage or your relatives, your friends, whatever it is. Take charge. Don't just feel it. Take charge. Here's what I know. I'm in charge. This is what I'm going to do. This is who I am, and so it is. Day one. Day one. And you know what? You don't have to go backwards and go, you know how many times I've said day one? Anybody here thinking, you know how many times I've said day one? Don't raise your hand. It'll be embarrassing. We've all done it. Day one of a 30-day challenge. Day one of a 6-month challenge. Day one of 90 days of going vegan. I tried that. That lasted about, what was it, Rachel? A week? See, that I was never vegan. Apparently, I said day one and never did it. So what do you want this to be day one about? This is a big day. This is a big opportunity. There's something we have learned. We have learned from this experience of 9/11 in 2001 that 15 years later, maybe we actually do know how to take mind and create what we want in our lives. What do you want more of? You want more love? You want more success? You want more opportunity? Do you want more health, more vibrant health? Do you want better relationships? What do you want? What do you want? You know what you want? That thing in you that wants something? That's not just you saying, I want it. That's the divine in you saying, you are that. So take it. I love Ernest Holmes' quote when he says, anything you want, you have to take in order to receive. Now, he doesn't mean run out and take it off of someone. I'll have what she's having. Because that's not how that relationship ended, by the way. Just saying. But what it does mean is you have to take it mentally. You have to take it consciously. You will only ever receive in life what you are mentally equal to. And if you spend your time complaining, or you spend your time worrying, or you spend your time looking back at what wasn't, that is what your mind is creating for you. Someone just went, oh. And you know what? We should all do that. Let's all do that together. Ready? Because that's what it is. It should be that. We should be looking at ourselves and going, oh my, OMG. Why have I spent this much time in this brain? Why have I spent this much time in this mind when I could have had a V8? Right? Exactly. So there you go. Someday, when you hear where were you on 9/11, I want you to remember this day. Not that day. That day already is over. It did what it did. It created what it created. Its reverberation is still going on. Jump into that reverberation and change it. Move it. Turn it into what this song says, that someday all of our children will play together. And they're not going to notice who's a Muslim and who's a Catholic. They're not going to notice who's from Iran and who's from Ireland. They're not going to notice, because right now, if you put all of those children from all those different countries in a room together, they're just going to play. They're just going to have a good time. You got to get them young, real young, before they have a chance to listen to us, before they have a chance to listen to the world whose consciousness needs healing. Well, that's what I'm asking all of you to be, the consciousness that heals, because that's who we can be. And we need to look at the world and say, not only someday, but this is day one, and someday is today. Namaste.